party pays the ultimate price for saving the world from an ancient dragon. Hi everyone, All Things D&D is back with another story. Sometimes saving the world comes with the greatest price of all, but that's why we are heroes. Tell us your epic tales of victory and sacrifice after listening to this one. I am no veteran player to the D&D world. I've only been role-playing for about 2 years now, and usually in private sessions with my dad as DM, who is an OG player, my friends, and my brother. This story of ours takes place in the Forgotten Realms, just to make names a bit easier for my brother who is newer than I am. He has read the Legend of Drizzt series, and my dad wanted to help him out a little. My character was an Aasimar paladin named Yggdrasil. We only had 2 other characters in our party, my brother's half-elf wild mage and a Goliath druid named Uthol. We had run these characters through a low-level campaign before, and where we currently stood, we were level 11. Our party had recently come into contact with an ancient artifact that held immense power. It was a green orb that looked like an eye. The power emanating from the orb had awoken an ancient green dragon named Raziq. He followed our party wherever we went, trying to take possession of the orb, and we had no clue as to why the terrifying creature wanted it so badly. Until we wound up at a powerful priest temple. This priest patched us up because we had recently had a near-death run-in with the dragon, and he recognized the orb. He said it was a terrible artifact with the power to summon and control any chromatic dragon on the prime material plane, and Raziq was seeking it so that he could rule the material plane. So our primary objective became the orb's destruction. The priest told us our best hope to find knowledge was to seek out the wisdom of an Empyrean named Thrym. Thrym was the son of my patron deity Tyr. We were told he was at the peak of the mountains that loom behind the temple, and we should search there. So our party fought our way up the mountain, even encountering a beholder that was nesting in the foothills. Eventually, with major help from the druid and a few cold-resistant magic items, we came across a storm giant village where we were taken in. We rested there for the night, and the chief told us Thrym was the protector of their village against threats that even they could not defeat. He told us we could find him at the very top of the mountain, where the wind blew fiercely and the cold was crippling. Luckily for us, Uthol had prepared Windwalk, and we flew to the top of the mountain to see nothing. The sorcerer and I were looking around, finding nothing, but the druid, who had just made a nat 20 on his intelligence check, stared in awe. "What?" I asked, confused. "You don't see that?" he said in a whisper. "Don't see what?" "The massive palace." With that, he began to walk forward and disappeared into the side of the mountain. Still confused and a bit scared, the rest of us followed, and when we passed through the mountain, we indeed saw a glorious castle, and in the center of the courtyard was a man by an old log cabin, chopping wood. "We seek Thrym," I said.
"Who is we?"
the man asked. "We are in dire need of aid. The fate of the realm is at stake." He looked at us with cold eyes and said,
"The realm, you say? Very well, come in."
And he motioned toward his cabin. We stepped inside as he was pouring us drinks, and by now we had all begun to catch on, and he realized this.
"My form is not what you expected?"
he asked. "Not exactly," I replied. Immediately after the words left my mouth, my head was filled with a flash of light and burning pain.
"Is this more of what you expected? I do not believe in such vulgar displays of power."
I could barely nod as I reeled from the godly energy that just racked my brain.
"You have come to deal with the orb, yes?"
We stared at him in surprise.
"Well, I wouldn't be much help if I didn't know why you came, now would I?"
We all nodded. "How can we destroy it?" the sorcerer eventually asked.
"Well, that question is easier to answer than you might think. The very thing that seeks this stone's power is the very thing that can destroy it. The breath of an ancient dragon."
We all froze because we realized what this meant. The 3 of us must take on the massive green dragon, and one of us would have to be blasted by his poisonous breath to ensure the safety of our realm and the destruction of the orb. "I will do it," the druid said. He volunteered because he was the only one of us immune to poison, so against him, the dragon's breath did nothing to him.
"Rest for the night," Thrym said. "Tomorrow return to the priest. He will know what you must do and how to prepare."
When we awoke the next morning, I walked out of the cabin to see the druid talking with what appeared to be an elf. They looked over at me, and the elf handed the druid a scroll and disappeared. Once we were all prepared, the druid once again cast Windwalk, and we surged back toward the temple. We landed, and the priest was waiting, but something in his face told us something was wrong. "What is it?" the sorcerer asked. "Raziq has destroyed the city neighboring our temple. I'm afraid we are out of time." We all shared a look of sorrow and felt the weight of those lost lives on our shoulder. Fortune is on our side, friend, I said. We have learned of a way that will allow us to destroy the orb and the beast at the same time. His eyes brightened a bit as he looked up. Very well, but it must not be here. I know of a place I can send you there. It is far away from all other people. That is where you must call him. We prepared our things and went to the priest's chambers, where he had drawn a teleportation circle. Silently, we stepped inside, and I put the orb in my bag. We nodded and looked around one last time. Instantly, we appeared on a barren tundra, no mountains or anything in sight. I took the orb out of my pack and looked to my friends, who I had been adventuring with for so long. Well, my friends, if this is to be our last battle, I'll say it's been a good run and an honor to serve with you both. They both stated the same. I took the orb in hand and raised it above his head and screamed, Raziq, come here to face your doom! The orb pulsed brightly for a moment, then faded. I passed the orb to Uthol and clasped his massive arm tightly. The gesture conveyed more than words ever could. He understood the amount of respect I had for him and the burden he must now carry. Moments later, we see on the horizon a massive green arm erupt out of the ground. The dragon had just failed its teleportation spell. We watched in awe and horror as two massive wings unfurled and beat fiercely as they raised the massive creature up into the air. Our sorcerer began casting his defensive spells. The dragon began climbing higher and higher and then folded his wings in and dive-bombed our party. The DM told us all to make wisdom saving throws, which we all failed, and the world went black. Moments later, our eyes opened, and we were in a massive cave. Green gas oozed from cracks in the walls, and the stench of death hung thickly in the air. Two green eyes flashed, and the massive head of the dragon surged out of the darkness.
If you will forgive me for bringing you here, I prefer the comfort of my home to the cold tundra,
the dragon said. Its thunderous voice echoed off the charred cavern walls. What do you want, foul creature? I shouted.
A deal. If you submit to me and give me the orb, I will let you live, and you can be kings in this new world I plan to create.
My shoulders shook as I began to laugh. What? Just give you the orb so you can summon your kindred and lay waste to our homes? I think not. It would be a disgrace to everything I stand for to even consider. The dragon sighed in exasperation.
Mortals and their foolish beliefs. Very well, then you will all die as fools.
We rolled for initiative, and Uthol managed to go first. He wild-shaped into an earth elemental, and we saw him raise the orb above his head with his stubby rock fingers. The dragon unleashed its venomous breath that engulfed the orb and the druid. I shielded my eyes against the flash of bright green light. I blinked away the swimming lights burn into my eyes as the dust settled. The dragon was laying on the ground unconscious, and the druid was nowhere to be seen. The sorcerer and I were worried about our friend, but we realized that we had to take advantage of our situation. We began to blast the dragon with all manner of spells and attacks we had, all the while looking for our missing friend. Eventually, the dragon drug itself up off the ground and began to make its attacks against the sorcerer and I. After a turn of combat, we see a massive rock drop from the ceiling and land on the dragon's back. The druid had returned. We continued to fight, but eventually the sorcerer and I were knocked unconscious, and the druid's wild shape form was destroyed. I made one death save and looked up still on the ground to see the druid pull out a scroll. Suddenly, we were back at full health, and I cheered. I cheered until I looked over and saw my Goliath friend collapse bloodied and bruised, with horrifying wounds all over his body. He had sacrificed his life and taken our wounds upon himself. He was dead. I roared in fury and activated my radiant soul and flew over to the druid. Not yet, my friend. I cannot lose you too. I cast Revivify and pumped all of my points of Lay on Hands into the druid. He rose on unsteady legs. My thanks, he said, and then took on the shape of the earth elemental again. We fought hard and we fought well, but I was rooted to the ground by the dragon's lair magic and beaten until I was fighting to stay alive. The druid stood over my barely living body, protecting me, and was raked across the chest by the dragon's wicked talons. And now it was up to our sorcerer, and almost poetically, his fireball wild surged for max possible damage, and the dragon was near death. The dragon roared in pain and backed away.
Asmodeus, make good on our deal,
it bellowed. The world once more went black. Horrific shouts of pain echoed from the other end of the cave, followed by a chilling laugh. When he could see again, the sorcerer saw the dragon shriveled and devoid of color, drained of life. A voice from behind him spoke. Well done. Few mortals can stand up to a dragon as you three have. The sorcerer spun around to come face to face with a 9-foot-tall, well-dressed man with horns. What did you do?
Nothing much. The dragon didn't make good on his end of the deal, so I exacted my price. I have a proposal. The words hissed out of his lips. If you will be my advocate on the prime material plane, I will save your friends.
I had just made my last death save and woke up, and turned to see Evil Incarnate talking with my friend. I drew his sword and rushed over. The man merely looked at the paladin.
You stay out of this, weakling. Your god has no power here. I do.
My fury grew, yet I could not speak, so I turned around and saw my friend once again laying on the ground. I rushed over, but it was too late. The druid had critically failed on his death save. I cradled my friend's head in my arms and screamed. It was a cry of pure agony. The sorcerer walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. I looked behind me to see Asmodeus, shaking his head and disappearing.
I'm sorry.
I said no, the sorcerer said. I don't think this is how Uthol would want to come back. I merely nodded, and the sorcerer took out a scroll of his own and read it. With the flash of light, we were teleported back to the temple. The priest was waiting, and he rushed over smiling, until he saw who I was cradling in my lap. Is there something you can do for him? I begged. The priest's eyes rolled back, and a few moments later he looked down on me with a sad smile on his face.
I could bring him back, but I would have to force him. He is at peace.
He died naturally. We nodded. I would like to bury him with his people. I think he would like that. The priest looked at us sadly. Very well. He waved his hand over Uthol's body, and his horrific wounds began to close. He looked at us again and said, It was the least I can do. We said our thanks, and the priest cast Windwalk on us, and we flew up into the air, rocketing towards the mountains in the west, where we knew our friend had lived. We spotted the Goliath village and touched down, my paladin still on his knees, holding his friend. Within moments we were surrounded by spears, shortly followed by gasps and screams. A massive Goliath with a great axe stepped forward and froze.
What is the meaning of this?
He whispered and pulled out his axe.
Who are you?
He roared. We are his brothers, in spirit and in service, and we all owe our lives to him, I said somberly. The huge Goliath bent down and grabbed me by the front of my tunic and said,
I am his brother.
He dropped me, then gently picked up Uthol's body, and as he walked away, we saw his shoulders begin to shake as he disappeared into a hut. Another Goliath stepped forward, this one smaller and visibly older.
You will have to forgive my son. Understandably, he grieves for his brother. I am Ragnar, and father of Uthol. I welcome you. You say you are his friends.
Yes.
You say my son is a hero.
I looked up with a sad smile at the old Goliath and said, The greatest the realm shall ever know. The old Goliath smiled and said,
I should like to hear the stories of my son, but first we must send him off.
We turned to see the villagers had assembled a great funeral pyre. Uthol lay upon the timber with his massive staff in his hands. We walked into the crowd, and they led us to the front. Uthol's brother handed the sorcerer and I torches.
I am sorry for the way I acted earlier. You two seem to be true friends of my brother. You will cast the first torches, he said.
We can't, the sorcerer began.
You will, the Goliath interrupted. You have earned the right. It's what he would have wanted.
With shaking arms, the sorcerer and I cast our torches upon our friend's pyre, and one by one, each of the villagers did too. We stood and watched our friend as he disappeared in the flames. We watched till nothing but ashes were left of the pyre. The old Goliath clasped us both on the shoulder.
Here, we do not mourn death, friends. Here we celebrate life and remember who he was. Please, come join us in the long house.
He gestured over to a massive hut. We smiled and nodded. We spent the night drinking and celebrating the life of our friend and recounting his tales and epic feats. We fell asleep in the longhouse with Uthol's village. When we awoke the next morning, we found Uthol's brother standing in front of the longhouse, geared up as if he was leaving.
I should wish to join you in your quest after this, Asmodeus. The way it sounds, he and this dragon had a deal, so he is in part responsible for my brother's death. I will have vengeance.
I thrust my arm forward and clasped his arm tightly. We would be delighted to have you, my friend. I think he would too. And with that, we set out down the mountain, and as we were departing, a black cloud formed and lightning struck the ground. The Goliath laughed and said,
He is telling you goodbye.
During this entire part of the story, everyone at the table was choking back tears. So great was the impact this story and Uthol's sacrifice had on each of us. We all were quiet listening to my dad spin this wondrous story, and from then on we've remembered the death and the life of Uthol the Great, the druid who saved the world through his sacrifice. A friend's sacrifice never to be forgotten. I love that Uthol's brother is going to join the group. It really makes this story perfect. Also, huge props to that dad for playing D&D with his kid. Please let us know what you think and comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, All Things D&D. Our next video will be posted in 3 days, so stay tuned for more amazing Dungeons & Dragons content.